we'd land and taxi up to him, and if he could climb in, he'd climb in the airplane. If not, they'd have to put a swimmer in the water, and I was collateral duty as a swimmer, and that's how I started.
Welcome to the Calm in the Chaos podcast, where we discuss untold heroic experiences and dive into the mindset of the Navy's elite rescue swimmers. Hosted by former U.S. Navy Aviation Rescue Swimmer, Mount Everest solo summiteer, and best-selling author Brian Dickinson.
Well, I am excited to have Bill Moss, aka Red Dogg, on the show today. Thanks for joining us, Bill.
You're welcome, Brian. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely had an
colorful
interesting
career.
There you go.
That's my skipper told me that a long time ago.
That works. But before we get into the Navy and SAR and everything else, why don't you tell the guests a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up and how your childhood was?
I grew up in Augusta, product of 13 years of parochial school. Joined the Navy when I was 18. After working a summer at the airport, I figured out I needed aviation in my life somewhere. So when I went down to, you have to understand, my dad was a World War II survivor, Pearl Harbor survivor. So he's very pro-Navy. He flew PBYs, and I don't know if you can see it in the background, but I've got a picture of his PBY back there.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Visual. Anyway, I said, well, Dad, I think I'll join the Navy. He said, get in the truck. And he took me down to recruiter, and I joined. I wanted to be a mech. Recruiter said, I got a billet for you. And that was on the 30th of October, 1963. And on the 1st of November, I was standing tall at Great Lakes with a set of orders to ADRA school. And so I did all of that.
So ADR, how is that different from like ADJ? I know.
Well, ADR was the forerunner to all of it. It was aviation carpenter's mate or something first, and then it was ADRs were all round engine guys, and then I worked on 985s and 1820s and seaplanes, Beechcrafts, all the old reciprocating engines. And I spent about 10 and a half years as an ADR, and then changed my rate to ADJ, which opened up a whole new thing for me, because I went from being a 10 and a half year ADR2 to 11-year ADJ1 and 13-year ADJC and yada yada up through Master Chief. Anyhow, that was where I was at. So when I got my first set of orders out of A school, there were 36 of us. 35 went to Corey Field in Pensacola, and I went to Naha, Okinawa. I did my first D West in 33rd Air Rescue in April of 65.
So, okay. So when did SAR come into the picture?
Well, actually, it came in when I was flying the HU-16s out of Naha. What happens is, if the HU-16 had a pilot in the water, we'd land and taxi up to him, and if he could climb in, he'd climb in the airplane. If not, they'd have to put a swimmer in the water, and I was collateral duty as a swimmer, and that's how I started.
Was it basically who can swim and everyone else stepped back, and
that's pretty much okay, you're the collateral swimmer, nice. And you're going to D West, oh, by the way, Yep. And it wasn't D West at that time, it was a week long. It was like 5 days. You had 2 days of classroom, the Air Force,
What was that training like?
Well, it was cool. It was 2 days of classroom. They taught you about poison snakes and jellyfish and yada, yada, yada. And then they took you out and did then we went behind the Mike boat with the hoist but it was in the Pacific. So, I mean, it was off the coast of Okinawa. So there's big swells, lots of waves. It was a little, it's not like, wasn't like doing it down in Pensacola in the Bay. Let's
Hmm.
just put it that way. It was a pretty aggressive course, actually.
I would imagine. What about the equipment? Like, did you even have harnesses or anything at
Oh
that point?
yeah, oh yeah, and they drop you off the back of the boat and drug you and put it and they actually put a chute in so that you get the feel of it. It was I was very I'd just say I was kind of surprised how much there was to it. But I didn't, I mean, I was a swimmer, that's what I did. I did that in high school. And, that's how I got into it all. I was
Hmm.
a swimmer.
Who was running the training at that point?
Well, you mean the Navy side?
Yes.
Nobody.
Okay. So this was pre-Navy SARS school.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I got my 82, 85 designate. I was homegrown at HT8 in Pensacola as an 82, 85 star swimmer well, I got my wings in 68, April 68.
Okay.
But I had and the training was a whole lot different too. The homegrown training was very different because nobody was detailed as a swimmer.
Hmm.
The NEC, the 82, 85 NEC was just an NEC that said you had a collateral duty. So when you went from base to base, you transferred as a mech. And the mech detailer would send you, let's say, somewhere anyway, Corey Field,
Hmm.
and you wanted to fly. You had to put a chit in to fly. And then once you got the chit in and got approved, most of the time you went on a half set of skins for the first 6 months or so. So that means you did 4 hours every month, but you only got paid half. So you only made like 27.50. And
Yeah.
then after that, if you brought it up, they brought you on as a full-time crewman. So when I was in Ellison Field, I was at HT8 in H-34s. And we were flying the Lex detachment and training, chocks and blocks, everything you do now, we were basically doing it,
Hmm.
except there was no 95.
Right.
The only you had the one seat Dilbert Dunker. And what they
All
would
right.
do is they get all the air crewmen that were getting ready to go through the Dilbert Dunker and take us down there and all the junior officers and ensigns and stuff would be on the side of the pool watching. And we'd all go through it. And we'd be through it in half an hour, 45 minutes.
Hmm.
There'd be 150 AOs down there, man. And so they just run us down there one day and we do it and come back to HT8. It was quite an experience for me, and especially being homegrown. I was already a lifeguard. So most of the training at that time was water safety instructor, WSI type training,
Hmm.
brakes and holds, stuff like that.
Yep.
Because when you flew in the H-34s, particularly at Ellison, we'd fly the det, but what we'd have is you'd put the seat in the water. You'd be the only crewman on board. There'd be no swimmer. And you put the seat in the water and pick him up pick the pilot on the seat if he could get in there.
Yeah.
If he couldn't, then they had what they call a swimmer's harness that you attached with reverse jaws onto the cable, and you put it on, and the co-pilot ran the hoist from upstairs, and you went down. Well, now think
Wow.
about that for a minute. You got
Yeah,
40
I am.
foot cable already
That's
in the
crazy.
water, and you're putting another 40 foot down or whatever, 10, whatever it was.
Hmm.
And so when you gave the thumbs up to pick up, you had better be paying attention because there'd be cable out there everywhere.
Yeah.
So we didn't do any jumps, no swimmer deployment like that, none of it.
Hmm.
It was all basically dry
Ski
crew.
bagged. Yeah. Well, that's pretty wild. Like to even think about like the pilot having so much control at that point and to have the awareness of, creating a steady hover and, in ideal conditions, it would be difficult, in not so ideal conditions, that's
Yeah, you put in a sea
possible.
state. You put in a sea state, it gets real interesting real quick.
Hmm. Wow. That's amazing. So then did you end up going to like the when SAR school became official, did you have to go back through it?
No, and the reason I didn't is because I was already a senior chief, had
Hmm.
already been, I was already I'd already been to HC1 SAR swimmer instructor course and all of that.
Hmm.
So the SAR model manager, made the sign, and
Yeah.
I was a swimmer.
Yep. No, that makes sense. Well, that's
I
great.
might
That's
add, I was the third 8215 non-tac chief to make, or non-tac to make master chief.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you think of like the foundation of everything that all the swimmers go through now, it all starts with you and your era. So that's awesome.
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely.
Learning the school of hard knocks and on the job training and just figuring out what works and doesn't. And that can be, super dangerous. And you learn in the worst case scenario so that, others may live within our
Yeah,
own group.
yeah. And my thing was always stay focused. Just stay focused.
Hmm.
You know, Calm in the Chaos was a good book, especially in the fact that it pointed that all these guys, especially in the back, like I told you, in the back where the SAR reports and everything was, you know, half of those guys I knew.
Yeah.
Frankie Leitz, I trained Frankie Leitz in Firewood '06 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did his retirement speech. But he was
That's
an airman when he worked for me.
isn't that funny? Yeah, that's been the feedback. Like everyone knows at least someone, but usually multiple people throughout that book, and that's just a very small glimpse into our world.
Yeah.
Um, well, cool. Thanks for sharing that. Um, do you have any like memories, things that stood out as far as like your training, back in the day before training really existed?
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff that stands.
Pick one or two.
You don't understand this, or you may not understand this, but back in the day, if you were a flyer, that was a collateral duty. Well, the chief, a lot of times, because where's Red Dogg? Oh, he's out flying. Oh, that's some bitch. One of them aviators.
Hmm.
You know, because most of the chiefs were non-aviators that you work for, the maintenance chiefs. So it was kind of you got kind of a black mark if
Yeah, isn't
you
that weird?
if you were a flyer,
Yeah.
because you're supposed to be in there turning wrenches. See, it's not like that today because of the AW situation, but for
Right.
us, it was like, you know, if we were out training or if we were out flying, we were not there to turn wrenches, and the chief was not happy. And that happened quite a bit. And when I went through training, a guy named Bill Lee trained me. He was a AD1 uh, that I actually knew from VC5 out on Okinawa. But when I went through his class, I was working nights. I worked from 3 to 11. And when I had to go to class was 6 in the morning,
Hmm.
and I didn't get any time off for that. So I went through it all, quote unquote, voluntarily, if that's what you want to call it.
Yep.
I just
I
went
do.
through it because I wanted to do it. I wanted to be a swimmer, you
Yeah.
know, and I thought it was good stuff. And it was 55 extra a month. And when you're feeding kids, that's pays rent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my drive, quote unquote, was that, hey, I can do this. I know I can do this. This is a challenge, but I know I can do it. And I was in there with 5 other guys, And, three of them were like, I ain't doing this shit no more. And they'd
Yeah.
walk off. But the three of us that year, that class, that three of us made it.
Hmm.
And there wasn't a lot of running or anything like that. It was, like I said, mostly water safety type training, water safety instructor training, breaks, holds,
Hmm.
water time, a lot of water time.
Yeah.
Not much running or any of the PT, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But the majority of it was just how to handle yourself in the water, which I kind of already knew. So it was pretty much a blow for me.
But the training itself, because if you were a lifeguard, the life saving, the breaks, holds, releases, all that is pretty it's evolved quite a bit. And even now it's that water jujitsu. You don't take people underwater. So I'd imagine even when you were going through, like, the differences of even your lifeguard training versus what you were doing in the Navy probably differed a little bit. You had the confidence, but it probably increased that confidence just because of the training and the environment you were in.
Well, that's the driving force is where you're at and what you're doing. I mean, I've always felt that way. And in the long run, as long as you're focused, you can pretty much remain above it all and focus on the event as it happens and what's breaking, and be ready to be flexible.
Hmm. What was the risk if you didn't pass the course?
Oh, for the back in the day,
Hmm.
nothing.
Yeah.
You just didn't make it.
So nothing to
You
lose.
lost $55 a month.
Okay. So there's financial incentive and just that drive to do something
Right.
different and
Additional.
bigger. It's interesting. So back then it was I don't want to say back in the day. Back then it was almost like a greed. What you were describing, it's the other chiefs. It's almost like you were getting, I don't know, like a good deal, even though you trained for it. You were doing extra, you know, classroom work in the morning, everything else. You're doing this extra job, dangerous job, with the aircraft and everything back then. But because you weren't turning wrenches, it's almost like you were getting a good deal, and some of the other chiefs
And
were
that's
maybe
what,
jealous.
and that, right. You're on the right track. And that's what a lot of it was. Some of it was envy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I don't know. Envy is kind of the source of so many evils in this world. So it's
Right.
like if you can just quit caring about what other people have and just worry about yourself, there's a lot of freedom in that.
But I always found it very, it's exhilarating. I love flying. I love the helos.
Hmm.
Uh, Having flown fixed wing and helos, and it just, there's nothing about flying that I don't like.
Yeah.
I didn't at the time. I was young and dumb. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's the best way to be.
Yeah, and I was a night flyer, which is spectacular, especially over Pensacola Beach and that area. Over to Mobile. And the only time I ever got scared, we lost an engine over Mobile Bay, and I had to park it on the hill down there. And
Oh
have the
wow.
army come pick it up the next day.
Yeah, that is
We
scary.
hitchhiked out.
Yeah, flying at night back then you didn't have all the devices. Was it all like, did they have IFR and the ability to, have all the gauges that they could trust, or was it mainly
Oh yeah,
visual?
but it was all lit up. Your whole what a little backstory to that is that when we when I did the H-46 uh, SEAL team mission out of HC5, we were the first U Navy 46s to get NVGs.
Okay.
And you had to adjust one eye to the inside and one eye to the outside.
Yeah.
And that's how we flew. And we were
Yeah.
flying at 40 feet off the deck. And, you
Yeah,
know,
those things were heavy too. We had the old school ones with the battery pack, and by the time you're done, like you had a rubber neck.
PVS 5s, we were using the old tanker goggles. And I took a 1 pound lead ball that we used on the back of the 46 and sawed it in half, velcroed it to the back of my helmet so that because you get
Counterbalance.
half an hour on those bad boys, you'd have a diamond cutter of a headache.
Yeah, that's wild. Do you have any neck pain now that you can
No,
mount to?
no,
No,
huh? No, nothing that would reflect on that.
that's good. Yep.
Most of mine comes from being old.
Yeah, well, can't escape that. Awesome. Let's segue into you have an interesting rescue in when you were stationed in Kauai. Do you want to bring us through that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. uh, Kauai is actually I had seven H3s down there, and the old UH3s. When I checked aboard in '76, we still had two of the H3s that had minesweeping hardware in them from Haiphong Harbor that HC1 had. I think it was one. Anyhow, so having said all of that, I made chief on the 16th of December, 1977, and I had a call in the morning of the 17th. I had a call from the CDO saying, "Hey, we've got somebody, they've got a couple of lost hikers and they need somebody to fly." You have to understand at Barking Sands, we were all weapons recovery guys, but we were 8215s. So we didn't maintain a hot SAR watch.
Hmm.
If you lived in housing, the CDO would come down and say, "Hey, man, you want to go up the hill? You want to go find somebody?" Yeah, sure, why not? So they called me, and I said, "Okay, I'll go." And I said, "Call the guy that lived behind me, was a kid named Tommy Brady." And I said, "Call Brady, and he and I'll go down there, and we'll go out and look for him." Well, where they were at was under kind of a shelf. Well, we'll get to that part of it in just a second. How we found them was we had a kid on the beach that wrote help in the sand at the base of the valley. And we flew up to him and landed on the beach, talked to him. I talked to him. Of course, he wanted to go for a halo ride, and I said no.
Of
Anyhow,
course.
we got a general idea where they were at. And we went up into the valley, and as we flew around, we couldn't see them. We didn't have where they were at was like under this shelf, and it was just shaded, and you just couldn't hardly see them. Well, Tom Brady saw them. He said, "Hey, they're over here. They're at 3 o'clock, yada, yada." So, okay, let's go over and have a look. So we go over there and stick our nose in it. And as we were looking, I'm thinking, well, now I don't know how we're going to get in there. So the initial approach, I told the pilot, let's just slide right over the top, and I'll put the hoist down and we'll grab them. They were on a shelf about 6, 8 foot long and about 18 inches wide. And they'd been up there for 52 hours. We didn't know this until later.
Hmm.
And had been in dark, basically, in the shade, in the rain for 52 hours. They were almost hypothermic.
Yeah.
And so I got up, I put the hoist out. Well, all of a sudden, I got all the cable fit out of the hoist, and I'm looking at the red, the danger
Yeah.
marker. And I went, "Oh man, going to be in some, we can't get them with this hoist." So we flew around in circles, had a little pre-SAR brief. And as we flew around in circles, I said, where it was at was enough where we could back the helo in.
Hmm.
I said, if you want to do it and you want to try and get them out, we can back the helo into the slot between the
parallel
two
park.
valleys or over the valley. And this is a valley. It's 1,200 feet AGL.
Hmm.
So where these kids are at. So I picked a spot, and I told the pilot, I said, when we get to where we need to be and I say stop, you mark the spot because we're going to have to do this twice. And he said, "Okay, we got it." So I talked him back. I backed him into the slot, and it had rained, and there was a stream over the top of these guys. So that's how much overhang I had. I had like maybe 6 feet. So I took the guy as I just kept saying, easy down, easy down, easy down. And when we'd start sucking water out of the stream with the rotors, I'd say, stop. And I had just enough hoist cable to get to him without being in the red. So when I got down there to him, the hoist and the horse collar was just blowing around really radically. So I pulled it all back in, and we took our SAR bag, which had blankets and water and stuff in it, and I put that on it on the male side. The hoist has got the recovery side and the mailbag side, right? So I put that on the mailbag side, and I dropped it down again. Well, that stabilized it enough for this kid to reach out with a stick and pull the horse collar in. Now, you got to understand, I was doing all of this in the peripheral because I'm watching that water.
Yeah.
I can't take my eye off of that water. And Tommy, he's talking to me real slow and real easy. And so what I can see is just barely below the deck of the airplane. So Brady finally said, the kid gets in the hoist, in the horse collar. As he does, Brady goes up. That's all he said, was up. And I hit the up button on the hoist and up, 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 up like that. And we come out of the hole. And this kid is flying. He's got a double E ride going on. He's below us at 100 feet, and we're trying to get him in, Well, we get the first guy in, everything was cool. I have to go back in retrospect. I have to tell you, we did hover where they could see us, and we briefed them visually on how to put the horse collar on.
Okay.
Okay.
Were you like demonstrating in the cabin?
Yeah, in the cockpit. I showed them how to do it.
Okay.
I'm in the door. I'm in the door, and Tom's got the horse collar on, and we're all, doing all of this,
Yeah. You imagine what they're looking at.
They're giving us the thumbs up. They got it. They got it, right?
Yeah.
I said, okay. Well, we got the first guy out. So now, same drill for the second guy. And the pilot, a guy named Steve Lynn, pilot says, all right, Red Dogg, he said, I've got the bush. Meaning the bush that he used for horizon. He had visual reference. He said, I've got the bush. I said, okay, well, then easy down. And as we got down and it started sucking water out of the stream again, I said, stop. The kid did basically the same maneuver. He had the stick and he pulled the thing in, but he put the horse collar on backwards. And when he did that, you're out of options.
Yeah.
You got nowhere to go. So he put the thing on backwards. I said, easy up, easy up, easy up. And I pulled this kid around at 1,200 feet AGL with him hanging out of that horse collar backwards.
That's scary.
I get him up to the door, and his eyes were big as
imagine.
He was scared to death. And I said to Tom,
was he holding on to the hook as well?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I said, Tom, this guy's scared. Watch him. So he said, Tommy gives me a thumbs up, and he's looking at him and looking, man, I got him right up, not quite to the door. And he tries to climb out of the horse collar outside the airplane.
Yeah, it's a bad idea.
And Tommy jumped on the gunner's belt, jumped out, grabbed this guy in a bear hug, and I started the hoist coming down and was pulling him in with the gunner's belt. But it scared me to death. I thought I was going to lose him.
You're a split second of him slipping through and just watching him fall.
Absolutely.
Game over.
Wouldn't take but a minute. And him trying to help. That was
he doesn't know. He's in shock anyways, almost hypothermic, So yeah, man, that's wild. And you were awarded air medal for that, right?
We all got air medals for that. Pilot, co-pilot, and both crewmen.
That's amazing. Wow. Thank you for sharing and the detail. It'd be so cool to see footage of something like that. I mean, you're very descriptive. Thank you for that. But it's amazing, and it's sometimes hard to imagine just how difficult a rescue can be in those conditions. There's so many different aspects of it. Your head's on a swivel, you're communicating, you're trying not to kill the person coming up based on visual cues, and just working, in split second decisions that are life and death.
Well, that's that's why we do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my attitude about it. That's why we do it, because we can make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And you did.
And
That's
now,
awesome.
in retrospect, and I'll get a little backstory to that is I'm
Okay.
going to HC1 to SAR swim instructor school. Okay,
Okay. Yep.
I'm staying out in Coronado, right down the street from McPee's, which is a big SEAL team bar,
Yep.
and I'm having a beverage in McPee's one evening, and I'm sitting next to this guy, and I'm thinking, man, I know this guy. So I said, this is like maybe 2 years later. Wait a minute, it would have been 73, 80, I mean, 77, 80, probably about 5 years later. And
Okay.
this guy says, I said to this guy, I said, man, I know you from somewhere. Where do I know you from? He said, I don't know. He said, where are you from? I said, Kauai. He said, oh, I spent some time on Kauai. He said, matter of fact, some guys in a helicopter rescued me out there.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was one of the two guys. He was the first guy we pulled off. Now, is that irony or what?
That's amazing. Did he buy all your drinks that night?
Oh yeah, I didn't buy any more beer, but
That's awesome.
yeah, that was quite a surprise to me. I said, well, shit, I was one of those guys.
Do you remember if he was the first or second guy you pulled up?
He was the first guy off. He
Okay.
wasn't the second guy.
Yeah.
The first, and I knew he lived in Coronado because we got a letter from him thanking us.
Oh, wow.
You know, down the line in
Hmm.
like '78. You know, right after it happened, and then he got back. But I knew he lived in Coronado. But it was just so ironic that we're just sitting there next to each other at a bar. It was like it meant to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's so neat. Full circle. Well, thanks for sharing that. That is really cool. Let's just pivot to kind of some fun stuff here. What is a favorite piece of gear that you had for flying?
Well, I'll tell you what, it wasn't. It wasn't a Heeds bottle.
Did you even have heats?
Yeah, I did, but it stayed in my helmet bag. Because you can't lay on it, you know?
Yeah, I know. You're trying to get some sleep
Doing
in the back.
46, especially in 46s where you're doing vert rip, you're talking 40 seconds deck to deck, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're on
side
the ground a
slide,
lot.
side flares and all that. It's impossible to lay on that thing for 8 hours.
Yeah.
So anyway, it stayed in my helmet bag. But my favorite piece of gear was eliminated years ago, and that's the old hook shroud cutter because I had to use it
Yeah.
and it worked.
So they don't have that anymore?
I see. I don't know. I've been gone a long time,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, same.
What
And
you
we
know?
definitely had it in the 90s, but yeah, I'll have to ask some of the people that are still
Yeah,
in.
I don't know if they still, but that was my my other favorite piece of gear was the Sky Genie rappel device.
Yep. Yeah, they're still using that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know.
Yep.
And that was my other favorite piece of equipment. I thought that thing, you watched all. I used to go out there and watch those mountain guys do the figure eights and all that. Hey man, keep it simple.
I know.
You
I
know.
feel like I just missed that era. Like in my high altitude mountaineering career,
Uh huh.
everything's figure eights, Prussics, kind of old school, and that's just what I use. But there's so many auto blocking devices and just, different ways to do it. But
My least favorite device along those same lines is that ladder, the rack. That
yeah,
made my head hurt. It required too much thinking. Sailors don't want to think that hard,
yeah,
you know. And you could wrap 2.5 wraps on that Sky Genie and be gone, be down the road.
yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that was my other piece of equipment.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. All right, let's do something fun. It's a 1 minute hypothetical scenario. Okay, so we're going to get in the mindset of Red Dogg during a rescue. You ready for this?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a scenario, just random, and I want you to tell me what goes through your head as you're being launched. You're thinking, you're assessing everything that you're about to go towards, maybe
got it.
having misinformation. Okay. The scenario is, let's look, a nighttime rescue in ice-covered waters. Okay. A fishing vessel has struck an iceberg in Arctic waters, spilling crew into near freezing water. The swimmer must contend with ice chunks, hypothermia risk, and the disorienting darkness.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't be out there at night. So that ends that. But anyhow, the other part of that story, it sounds like to me you're giving me a review of the Marine Electric with Jim McCann.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And here's what happened to him.
Okay.
He got high. He was in oil and bulk fuel and all of that, and he rescued like 17 guys.
Wow. Yeah.
But he also got hypothermic, and they brought him in. He was in the water, and what would happen was they would bring him up in the wetsuit with the survivor, and he realized he was using Coast Guard basket.
Hmm.
And he realized that he couldn't be in and out of the water and not
Yeah.
not become hypothermic
Yeah.
or not speed up the hypothermia. So
Sure.
he had them drag him with the basket to each survivor, and then they'd raise him up, drop the basket back down, and drag him to the next one. So he got, I think I might have 17 might be too many. I think he got 7 of them. I'm not sure.
7,
Anyhow,
17.
here's
Just
what
total.
happened. He became hypothermic. When he became hypothermic, they brought him in the airplane. They thought he was dead and revived him. The minute that rescue report hit the SAR model manager's desk, Bill Nally had a heart attack. He was like, what wetsuit did he have on? Well, he had the same wetsuit on that they gave the same guys in the Indian Ocean. So Lloyd Bird, who was another member of the SAR model manager's office at that time, he was the wetsuit guy.
Hmm.
So he went to DUI and they made a 1/4-inch suit like overnight, you
Mhm.
know. And Nally called me at Fallon and said, hey, I need you to take this suit up to Lake Tahoe and test it. It's February in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
I put the suit on. He sent it to me. I put it on. We went up and we did jumps. What happened was that I got extremities was the issue, and we already had Arctic gloves for that kind of stuff and Arctic booties. So the suit was a success, and we tested it, and that was it. But that scenario that you gave me, I think it through real quick and real hard. And I think McCann did the right thing by not getting out of the water.
Yeah.
And the fact that he realized that says something about his emotional stability, you know.
Sure.
But I believe I would have done it the same way, not
Yeah.
gotten out of the water, let them drag me to survivors, you know. And how would I stay focused on that? You don't.
Yeah.
You don't stay focused on that. You just go, okay, let's do this.
Mhm.
And that's the mindset that I've always had. Stay focused? Nah, maybe, but let's just do it. Stick our nose in it.
Power through it.
Yeah.
Power through, mind over matter.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Exactly.
and to be able to adapt and improvise in that moment of I'm going to probably die from hypothermia if I keep getting out and the rotor wash is, freezing me on the way up. So yeah, and you never know until you're there.
Yeah. And in my SAR instructor tours, and I was at every squadron, I was the SAR instructor, the senior chief, the master chief, whatever. And my favorite statement is, let's just go stick our nose in it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's go up the hill, we got a guy here. We don't know exactly where he's at. Well, let's just go look. Let's go stick our nose in it,
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about all of it. And staying focused is is good, but sometimes you can overthink stuff.
Yeah, for sure. You get too many people thinking about it and then you get nothing done.
Yep.
Well, Master Chief Red Dogg, Bill Moss, Red Dogg,
Red Dogg.
Red Dogg. You've had incredible experiences that not many can relate to or really understand. What is a bit of wisdom that you can leave our listeners with?
First of all, I like to say that the SAR device is going to happen.
Well, that's good. Yeah, about time, right? I'm excited.
Well, I'll just take 2 minutes on that because I think it's important to the
Go ahead.
In 1972 or 73, Bill Nally was teaching SAR swims in Rhode Island or somewhere, and he made a comment about we need a SAR device. Well, it didn't come into realization until he became the SAR model manager in 77, 78. So at the first SAR model managers conference, 0178, agenda item 0178 was the SAR device. Do the math, it's 47 years. So now Rick Schoaf has put out, it's going to happen.
Yep,
he's in direct contact with the Admiral, so I'm waiting to see for it to happen. I want it to happen. I think the guys are ready for it. What advice do I have current SAR guys? I don't know if I can give them any.
Yeah, think about it.
They're smarter. They're quicker. They're trained better. And I used to make this statement as a Master Chief. I would make this statement. I'm getting guys out of swim school that learn more in 4 days than I learned in 4 years.
Yeah.
And that was a big issue. I got guys, when they got to the fleet, they were ready. I didn't have to spend 6 months training them up. That is, to me, the most important thing that the Navy did when they put RSS together. Yeah. And they put Air Crew School together, and I was there when both of them happened. Robinson was Nally took swim school, and Chief Robinson I kind of don't remember his name. Anyway, they flipped a coin basically to see who was going to get what. One of them got SAR swim school, one of them got Air Crew School. And that's pretty much how it happened.
Yeah, that's how life happens sometimes. Man, it's certainly evolved and it's continuing to. So I'm working with those guys right now as far as, different types of motivation, and it's neat to see just where it's at and where it could potentially go. And that's just how it should be. I mean, we learned so much, and it all started with you and your era. So thank you for that. And thank you for being a guest on this podcast. I know a lot of people can get a lot of wisdom from you and just, understand the mindset of, yourself and others that have just had incredible rescues and experiences. So thank you.
Yeah, I think So Others May Live pretty much handles it.
Yeah. Nailed it. No reason to change that.
Nope. Even if the Air Force don't like it.
And thanks everyone for listening. I look forward to our next episode. Please tune in.
Thank you for listening to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. Please subscribe to be notified of future episodes. And if you enjoyed what you just heard, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. Until next time, get out there and make a difference so others may live.